What do you attribute your passion for health and wellness to?
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm always talking about mental health. I still do.
Yeah.
I've dealt with what I would consider to be anxiety and depression my entire adult life. At least that's when I remember, not feeling well and trying to understand where it's coming from and whether or not other people are feeling the same way that I do. Being in that bed and feeling like, a million pounds are on top of me, or walking around and feeling heavy chest, or having thoughts go on in my mind that I was almost certain nobody else was having. Some of them were really, really dark.
Coolest background so far too, by the way. Is that a kitchen behind you?
Dude, my kids, it's the little playroom, dude.
Yeah.
I went on Amazon and bought an elephant.
I mean, those are some staples. Those are some staple animals. Man, all right. Let's just jump in. And just for context, Mark, I would love to start with, what do you do? Let's just start with that. Let's start with what you do professionally. How do you spend most of your time? Yeah.
I operate a brand called IWON Organics. We make legume-based salty snacks. I've been doing that for 8 years. But what do I really do? I'm really into health and wellness, as you know. I enjoy working out. I enjoy eating nutrient-dense foods and talking about it. I enjoy having conversations around those subjects. I enjoy putting out content around those subjects. I have a couple kids, so I'm doing a lot of that. We're at our tail end here of summer and getting back into school, which I look forward to get sort of more consistency in my days.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
Yeah. How did you, because you obviously post a lot about health, a lot about food on LinkedIn. What was that origin story for you? How did you get so into it?
It's every time I keep trying to remember when was my first post, it feels like it keeps getting further and further away, which it should. But I want to say that it was 5 to 6 years ago when I had told myself that I would be active on LinkedIn. It was the only platform that I'd be active on because I was never active on Instagram. I was always late on those platforms, or Facebook even I was late on. But I knew it was a place that I could congregate. I knew it was a place that I could start telling a story around things that I had been involved with when it came to business. That's what I think my original content was around. Business, sales, and I committed to doing posts every day. And that's what I did. So, and I've been doing it literally ever since. And it morphed into doing a couple times a day or whenever I felt like there was something to share. But it's a very simplistic story. And that's I think, the best ones.
Yeah. What I'm curious too is what drove you to start IWON?
IWON started because I had been finishing up with a bag brand that I had started in the health and wellness space, and with a product line that we were selling. Again, it was at that time we call meal management bags and or travel bags for fitness enthusiasts. I had noticed what the buy patterns were and a financial model around a buy pattern like that, which is you get one customer and they buy it once, or maybe they buy it a second or third time at max. I just didn't like sort of the financial model around that. And I was looking around at what I could do that could have more of a recurring aspect to it. I saw food and beverage. I said, I would always like to be in that, industry. And that's sort of how I started the process of moving into it.
What I'm also curious in, obviously the show, we're talking about the intersection of well-being, mental health, mental strength, emotional all of it. Okay. It all counts. We don't have to use one term. And business and success and entrepreneurship, and those who, are doing big things for their own life with their business and are just super driven, whether it's by purpose, passion, a mission, but also have this understanding that, man, if I'm not taking care of myself physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, none of that other shit is really going to work. And this is something, you post about all the time. And I know you're doing your physique competitions now, but, you've posted a lot more in the last 12 months or so, 10 to 12 months about, maybe just because I noticed about the mental health side of it. So what I'm curious about you is, man, what was that origin story like for you? How did you get what do you attribute your passion for health and wellness to?
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm always talking about mental health. I still do.
Yeah.
I've dealt with what I would consider to be anxiety and depression my entire adult life. At least that's when I remember, not feeling well and trying to understand where it's coming from and whether or not other people are feeling the same way that I do. Being in that bed and feeling like, a million pounds are on top of me, or walking around and feeling heavy chest, or having thoughts go on in my mind that I was almost certain nobody else was having. Some of them really, really dark. Coupled that with, whether or not was this because of my drinking or, using of whatever, and my lifestyle in that realm being so aggressive, which was really something that I was doing in all of the other areas of my life. I'm hardcore about everything that I do. So with that said, I'm very lucky that I had always been an athlete through high school and even a little bit as I went on to college. But I found the weight room early on when I was 19 or 20, even though I had been in the weight room, but not in the way that I was starting to at that age. And I fell in love with it. I'm more in love with it now than I was back then, but I was really in love with it. And so what I recognized was the connection between myself being active in a weight room and or being disciplined with the way that I ate and how I felt, as it being a really, really positive effect to the way that I felt. Now, I consistently was struggling every day, every week, recognizing that I was dealing with those things that I had already just described. And I was countering it with my activities, right? The physical aspects of working out and or eating well. And so that's the origin of it. And I've stayed very, very consistent, of course, over the last 20 plus years, not only because I was in love with it, but because I needed it. Yeah. And then I started layering in things that I talk about and we've talked about offline many, many times, which is you got to get rid of the alcohol. You've got to be taking care of yourself far more than those things I described as far as just going into the gym and or eating well. Yeah. There's so many other connections to your mental and physical health that you have to, be very cognizant of if you really want to, be able to reach some stability within yourself.
Yeah. As you were describing just like the heaviness, of that, whether there's the depression or probably the tension with the anxiety, something that I definitely resonate with. I'm curious, just if you're open to expanding on those a little bit and just maybe describing more like what your experience is like in those. And the reason I ask is, I think what I find a lot with the people I work with and the guys I work with is oftentimes they just kind of bucket things into two buckets. I feel good, I feel bad. And there's an opportunity for a lot of men to actually start to understand what's going on the inside, like paying attention to their thoughts, noticing physical sensations in their body, where it's coming from, what it's trying to tell them, emotions, that they're experiencing. And, it can help if somebody shares kind of just their experience. So I'm curious for you, like, what is your experience in those moments? What maybe is there a thought loop that you notice? Is there certain physical sensations? Are there warning signs when it comes? Maybe even what are things that you do to recognize and try and get yourself out of it as quickly as you can or as best as you can?
I think everybody has basically a different scenario, right? Everybody is dealing with some form of it, if they do, right? Yeah. And some of it is heavier than others. Like I always start there. There's a few people even that I follow online, and if they really are doing what they say they are, and they still describe really, really heavy depression, I would say that's at peak. Meaning they don't do drug or alcohol, they're working out, they're eating well, and they're still talking of heavy waves of depression. I think that is one end of the spectrum. Yeah. There's others that have very, very mild cases. And then there's probably the majority of us that sort of maybe sit in the middle. I'd say I've had heavy bouts. A lot of it dictated by how I was treating myself. So I start there as well, which is, what was I doing to myself as far as drinking alcohol, right? And or doing other things that I shouldn't be doing, and allowing that to be within my lifestyle, applying that in my lifestyle, even if it's once a month. Yeah. Because a lot of people miss that piece, right? Oh, well, I only do it. Well, yes, people really miss the fact that it sits in your body. It's a poison. Yeah. And if you're already what I would consider to be wired a certain way, that is the worst thing for you. Because people also forget these pieces to it, which is then what happens afterwards, right? I lost sleep. I didn't sleep. I chose bad foods. I didn't go to the gym. you're just layering it on. So I'll start there and then I'm going to move that, which is when I remove that, I've now been for more than a year, haven't had a sip of alcohol. But beyond that is these other things, which I think we're going to get to, because I'm going to open up a new subject for you here too.
Yeah, let's do it.
It's now coming to light. Is how is it possible that if I remove toxins and I'm doing all those other things that even I've described, I work out with intensity. I eat mostly whole foods. I've been gaining weight lately on purpose, but that's a whole side. Mostly whole foods. I get outside for walks. I love that.
Yeah.
The sun. How is it that I would still have these thoughts come across my mind throughout the day? Or maybe I wake up in the morning and just not feeling 100%. Well, I think that there's other aspects of your life that you have to look at.
Yeah.
And talking about being like an entrepreneur, I almost find it to be this weird paradigm that most of us never talk about. And it's not talked about enough, which is we put ourselves in a really bad spot. We're like grinding or whatever these terms are that people like, I'm hustling and I live this lifestyle. It's like the worst thing for you.
Yeah.
It's like what I used to do to myself and still do sometimes. And I know others who do too. It's part of this thing we're in, which is we self-sabotage. And I've been doing my own thing for the last 20, it's going to come up on, 22, 23 years. And some have gone well, what I'd consider well when I say like I've done some well financially, some have been complete nightmares and just brutal. But on that latter comment, why would I do that to myself?
Yeah.
So I'm going to park it there for a second because it went back to the original question is like, where, what was how did I find myself? And it's a work in process. I'll tell you that. It still is.
Yeah.
It still is.
Well, I'm curious actually your hypothesis on that. Like, why do you think you do it to yourself? And that's not a you as in Mark. Like, why do we do it to ourselves? Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah. There's so many Marks out there.
Yeah.
Right? You're doing it, you're doing it.
Yeah.
And I know you well enough, but like there's so many of us.
Yeah.
I think that we have something to prove.
Yeah.
For one reason or another. That's like one. Two is we enjoy not feeling joy. I know that's a really hard statement.
Yeah.
And people would say, what does that mean? Because just me, I can hear myself saying it. It's so confusing.
Yeah.
We're more comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's really sad. And, now I'm 45 and there are newer things coming to light for me personally that I think will start to not only uncover those things, but help me avoid them moving forward. Because my ultimate goal now, where I'm at now personally, is to avoid those. It's time for me, and I wish it upon so many others, to get out of your own way. And that could mean multiple things to multiple people, but I'll park it there.
Yeah.
And you can keep going here.
I love the addition to it, because I don't think it's joy, but I think you nailed it with the follow-up, which is the familiar and what's comfortable. And I heard this a while back where it was something along, I'll probably butcher it exactly, but it is like, we are wired to come home. And what that means is like whatever is familiar for us and our nervous system. And so if we have lived a certain way, viewing the world through a certain lens, meaning, hey, in order for me to make it, feel like I make it, to feel peace, to feel love, accepted, I have learned through childhood, through, teenage years, through maybe my early years in the professional world, that when I get success, that's when I feel admiration. That's when people say, good job. I get the high five. I get the paycheck, etc. Right. And so those beliefs and those behaviors are so deeply grooved that even when we get to a state and we realize we're like, man, I keep living this way. I keep, going through these cycles. Like you said, you and I we fall back, we have our tendencies, we go into them. And, whether it leads to burnout, whether it leads to mental exhaustion, whether it leads to, us neglecting relationships, neglecting our health for the sake of achieving or success or, whatever it is. And it's so funny because we can sit and have, an articulate, conscious conversation around, I don't want to feel that way. And what I want more than that, I just want to feel at peace. I want to feel content. I want to feel happy in my own body. Okay, well, why is it that, when push comes to shove and we're taking action, we do things that actually keep us in the state that we're familiar with, right? We always come back home, meaning if we're used to being anxious or depressed or whatever, even though we can sit here and have a conversation, I don't want to be that. The mind actually is attracted to and wants what it knows is familiar. I heard this quote a while back, was the ego or the mind would rather be right than be free. And so it would rather stay in the world of what's known than to possibly go out and live a different way, to view the world in a different way, right? To be more open, to not attach to things or ideas or outcomes, or not get, your feathers ruffled by what somebody says and just allow it to roll off your back. It's we're not wired for that. We're wired for the opposite. And so I think especially in my personal experience, that has just really seemed to be the biggest challenge and purpose that, that I face every single day, is learning to be how do I actually want to show up? How do I actually want to live and live more and more in alignment with that?
Yeah. When this goes live, or whatever it is, this will be a moment what I'm going to be announcing something in the next few weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
And this will be a moment that I really am excited about sort of earmarking, just having even pieces of content, even my journal. I use, I've mentioned this to you, it's called Penzu. It's this little journal. It emails you at night, says, what did you do today or something? I've been doing that weirdly because I'm not even a tech person. I've been using this app for I want to say 8 years, 9 years.
Wow.
Every night I write back something. It could just be one sentence, I had a bad day. I'm not feeling, sometimes it is I'm not feeling well, mentally. Or kids, we had a great day. My son scored 10 points, things that later I'll look back. And I've been documenting on purpose sort of how I'm feeling lately about what's about to happen with me. And all I'll say is I have a feeling that in 10, 15, 20 years, I'm going to look back and say, you are so lucky you made that decision. Let me go one step further. I'm really happy that you made that decision. Me speaking to myself. If God gives me that long to live, I don't know, who knows what happens tomorrow. And that's because I finally have given in, right, a bit to what do I really want to do? How do I want my days to look?
Yeah.
Do I want to wake up every morning to just stuff? Because the last couple of years with the business has been brutal. And there are reasons why, why do you keep doing it? There's certain reasons, no doubt, and I believe in them wholeheartedly. In fact, that's why I've been doing it even 3 or 4 years longer than I should have.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you got to come to the realization of just one thing, which is you don't want to live with regret. That's it. There's no doubt there are times in your life that you'll look back and say, I wish I didn't do that. Yeah. And then I wish I didn't do that for that long, right? I wish I didn't date that woman. I wish I didn't, treat that person this way. I wish I didn't, I wish I didn't. Yeah. Period. And the ones that have real regret are sitting there on their deathbed or whatever and they look back and there's just a large window, a massive amount of time that they lived in that I wish I didn't. I really don't want that for me. And you got to get brutally honest with yourself about many things. Some of this goes back to the health stuff, how am I treating myself? How am I treating myself, which means how am I treating others? If I can't show up for myself, I can't show up for others. Then it comes to this personal stuff or what do we do for a living? What are we doing? Why are we doing it? And just getting out of our own way and finding some happiness, which you only come to realize is right there in front of you. If you just choose this other path that feels foreign to you, could feel totally foreign to you, but it's right for you.
Yeah.
And just like if you were to start a new business, you go for it, Like, why is it so easy for somebody who's cut that way, an entrepreneur, to like, I'm just going to go for it.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go. Well, then what about all these other things that you could just go for that might change your entire life for the good?
Yeah.
And so, I'm there right now, and I feel like a weight will be lifted fairly soon.
Yeah.
And I'll leave it with a lot of people. This is just comment on the back, because I'm deserving of it.
Yeah. I love it.
So are you.
Yeah.
Whoever's thinking about these changes.
Yeah. I think, that what that brings up to me is something that I see a lot of people struggle with. I certainly did, which is tuning in to almost like the radio frequency of that gut voice, of that instinct, of the voice within that is the one that's like, dude, trying to get our attention. Hey, like the way we're living right now, just in general, is not in alignment with really where like your best self, your higher self, whatever is guiding you to go. And it sounds like, you're just more and more, you've been in tune with that, right? Checking in with that, but more and more, and the voice is kind of getting clearer, maybe getting a little bit louder. You're feeling better with the decision. I'm curious what has that process, just in tuning in more and more to that voice? I don't know if that's something that you've ever really thought of and thought about tuning into, but what does that look like in the last few years?
It's because there's so much rhetoric around, like we talked about the platform, there's so much talk about, well, if you do this, this is where you'll feel your best when you're on that journey. Oh, you get knocked down, but boy, does it feel good there's a lot of rhetoric around what we all do for a living. Whether or not you are a founder and you've got all those stories and you're inspiring others to just go do it. Like I have friends even, they'll think I'm like, taking shots at them, but I have friends who like say things and I'm just like, shut the fuck up, dude. Like, you know what I mean? Like, who their business might be doing well, like just go start that thing. Like, shut the fuck up, dude. You know what I mean? So sorry for my language. It's rhetoric. And when we can turn off the noise and start listening to ourselves, that's when we really do achieve. That's when we are able to put ourselves in a position to go after things that we in our heart knows is right.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you can't be inspired. I think that there's a lot of good in that, to have somebody maybe push you. I'm doing it with one of like a brother of mine. Like I'm pushing him to do something right now because he needs a little nudge.
Yeah.
His family, he needs a little nudge. That's different, right? But there's no pipe dream. I don't do that shit, And if somebody recognizes that there are so many different opportunities for them and they should choose the one that is best for them, not best for other people, not best for a storyline, not best for what are they going to think of me, but what's best for me. I think people will not only be doing more things that set them off in the good ways, but they'll just be happier overall.
I think that's the hardest part, right? Is not really being aware of why we're making decisions, right? And so I think that's it, is tuning in to figure out, hey, is this really a voice that's coming from within me, or is it something that has been conditioned, whether it's from my upbringing, my parents, society, telling me that I gotta, some people, it's like, I gotta become a doctor. I gotta make, this much money. I gotta do this. I have to do this by I'm 30, by the time I'm 30, are you making decisions that I have a buddy who always, backs up his decisions with like, no, it's like, what's right? It's the best decision. And I'm just like, fucking according to who? It's something that just is kind of used to defend, whether it's, I don't know, things I know he's not really passionate about, whether it is like a financial decision or, buying, I don't know, it's like buying a certain house or buying a certain car or whatever. And it's just, what I can see, my point in sharing that is the decision is being made through a filter of what others are going to perceive as right, or what he believes, check the boxes for what society has conditioned him to believe that, no, this is the way you're supposed to do it. Like, as long as I do this, everything in 40 years is going to be, is going to be A-okay.
It all comes down to something that's really simple. And you only learn this, hopefully you learn it early and recognize it and accept it. The reality is, for all of us, all we want is to be free. That's it.
Yeah.
We just want freedom. And what does that mean? That means that we want to know that our bills are going to be paid. Now, if you have a lot of bills, that means you need to make more money to be free. But if you can control that and not buy stupid shit, you could keep those numbers low and recognize, wait, I only need to get to X and I'm free, right? It's the freedom that we're all trying to achieve. And we get within ourselves and we get into our head and we look at everybody else. And nowadays, that's all we do. The piece that's missing here in all these conversations across the board is what got us here, at least over the last 20 years. Well, it's just social media, because now we get to look at everybody else, who, by the way, is it's bullshit too.
Yeah.
Everybody's fake life and everything else. The point is that when you recognize that your happiness is all derived from just being free, you release a big heavy weight from yourself. Yeah. I'm not saying it's not okay to go make a boatload of money.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's not, if you want the car it's all good. To each their own. For me, it's just for funny. I sold my watches 5 years ago because I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
But I used to, see, this is important so people really can relate to. I used to think that when I'm just pointing at my Whoop now. I don't even know what time it is.
You may sell your Whoop in a couple of years.
Exactly. I used to, because I was I'm insecure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm an insecure little boy who needed to go to Morton's and buy to give two fucks, dude.
Yeah.
And so why that's brought up now is, again, people have the ability to go choose things that are for them, that will make them happy, not just now, but later as well. And they can create a life around that by just recognizing, what do I need to do to become free?
Yeah. And I think your example with the watch is actually a great, I think maybe even a more true definition of freedom, because what you did is you released yourself from the prison of your own attachment to the watches, of needing something to happen in order to feel okay on the inside. And there was a part of you that said, hey, let me get these dope watches, maybe I'll get a necklace to match. I don't know if you're a necklace guy. And because it represented something to you, because there was a part of you, that felt like, hey, I don't have this thing as I am, but if I get the watches, having those will be able to get that from others, whether it's admiration, maybe it's love, maybe you're accepted into some group of, dudes at the coffee shop who all share their watches, and you look at each other's watches and you want to be a part of it, whatever. And the freedom that you're finding in becoming aware of that trap and recognizing, like, I don't want that anymore. Like, that's not me. I don't need that, and seeing the insecurity.
I just want to be happy, dude.
Yeah.
It's all of us.
Yeah.
That's all we want. We just want to be happy. And if you're really honest, like, think about the people that that are the happiest.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not saying that some of them couldn't be well off and they have,
right.
But you genuinely know that they're happy. Like, people, if people just sit on with that comment that I'm making right now, if you're super objective to it and you looked around at your sphere, people that like, who's genuinely happy? I have friends who are not on social media. They've never had a Facebook account. They're genuinely not well off, genuinely happy.
Yeah.
They can sit in their own thoughts. I'll park that there for a second so people can understand that. You ever just sat down and did nothing? There's no phone. There's no nothing. I'm not talking meditation shit. I'm just talking about, can you sit in your own thoughts and not stress yourself out?
Yeah.
Right? And be happy. that is sort of the litmus test.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you that there's no car, there's no house, there's no nothing that can buy that for you. There's those people who like to throw in these things, and I sometimes get it because I think that there's a kind of a ha-ha to it. It's like, but money does help. No shit. Of course. But let's just talk reality. So yes, it relieves some stressors.
Yeah.
Those folks that live in poverty or live in areas, in places that you would never be able to live in, right? Kids that I know that brought up in really tough spots, tough areas, and like there's no doubt, right? But what we're talking about here is just happiness.
Yeah.
And the people that are on these social platforms and talking and posting and are you happy? Are you happy?
Yeah, it's not a prerequisite by any means, and I think, what you shared about being able to sit with your thoughts is such a big piece, because the people that can't and that struggle with it, right, they lean on things to keep them distracted, whether it's open their phone right away in the morning, they sit and doom scroll on social media. They have Netflix on for 4 hours at night, fall asleep with the TV on. They're smoking a little weed, they're drinking, they're doing drugs, they're on gambling sites, they're looking at their Bitcoin between calls, right? You come up to a stop sign or a stoplight and you check your social media really quickly. Like, it's all because of this underlying level of discomfort with being with what is. And when we never, ever allow ourselves to even try or go to that space, our mind is just going to do a great job of going from distraction to distraction, from numbing to numbing to numbing until we fall asleep. And then we wake up and it's just rinse and repeat. Right. Correct. And so we train ourselves to constantly look for, hey, I'm feeling a little discomfort. Okay, let me buy a new thing. Okay, I don't like, okay, let me get the new flashy thing. And then if you have more money, you're just able to buy, bigger and nicer things to continue the distractions. And of course, that's not to say that everybody has money. Everybody that has money, does it for those reasons by any means. But I think that's such an important piece, is to just a great litmus test is, man, are you able to sit for 30 minutes by yourself without being uncomfortable with just being with your thoughts?
This leads into a much bigger conversation, and it's a topic, but I've noted it and said it many times, social media and what I had sort of presented before over the last 20 years, to me, it's the biggest destruction to our mental health than anything by far since civilization. I mean, not even by far. And it's because of what you just described. And anybody who's watching this, if they're really honest with themselves, I'm not excluding myself. I know what I do too. Yeah. I know what I'm now having to do with my kids, with my son. I'll see, where are you going with that phone, dude? I'll tell them, right? Yeah. That's how I talk, by the way. Yeah. And it's because that's what we are being learned. And that's what we are accepting as the norm. But it's not normal. Yeah. And it's highly dangerous, and it's proven to be dangerous. And again, I'll go back to the statement of it's the biggest destruction to our mental health across the board. Mm-hmm. And so I'll go back to it. It's because we can't now, because we don't even know what it's like now, sit in our own thoughts. Yeah. You just described the person who rolls up to the stop sign or the stoplight. They can't even help themselves for 2 fucking minutes to not look at their phone. That's check. Sick. Yeah. It's a problem. Yeah. And then what we've done, of course, is we have now created that thing that was also described before, where what are we actually looking at? What we're looking at, what we're supposed to be and or supposed to look like. Yeah. And we're supposed to make as much as, and we're supposed to a comparative state, which is not only going to be destructive, but it's what's the cause and effect to the other things that we do. Yeah. So then when we feel bad, we eat bad, we don't go move our body, we talk a certain way, we put ourselves around people that we shouldn't. And it's a vicious cycle into what we are now seeing. I know this has morphed into some really
it's great.
It's what I think, it's how I feel, and we need change and all the good stuff, but it's worth talking about. So because if you don't talk about it, you can't get people to even recognize it, right?
Yeah. I mean, just the idea of sitting and staring at your phone and scrolling for really any amount of time, but see people forgot. Dude, I was in the gym the other morning before jujitsu. I went up at 5 a.m. and I go in, and these people came in. They were both on the treadmill, both like walking at a good pace, like a little incline walking, not running. And both of them during my whole warm up, and they may have been, I don't know how long before I got there. I don't know how long, like when I left my warm up was, let's say, just over 20 minutes. The whole time they're both on their phone scrolling while walking on the treadmill. And it's just, it's so crazy. And these companies, they build this stuff into the apps that taps into our primal nature, and they're studying human biology. They're studying the mind. They're building into the apps exactly what is going to keep us sucked in. That's why it's so hard, right, to stay off of them, is because they're literally designed to like light up all of our hot buttons, and ding the bell at just the right time and flash the light. And their whole objective is to keep our attention. Correct. And we're losing our ability to not do that. And when we don't have the ability to keep our own attention, how the hell are we going to be able to navigate the thoughts, the 50 to 60,000 thoughts that we have pop up in our mind every single day? If we can't keep our attention on the space that holds the thoughts, like we're just going to be attached to every single thought that comes up. Right? It's going to take us on a little wild ride, a wild goose chase.
Anybody and everybody would agree. I mean, if they put the phone down, these are just simple. If they don't use their phone for the day, or I'm going on a tech break for, like, you feel better.
Yeah, so much.
It's like it's fact. Or like for me, like why I love working out, besides the physical and mental piece to it, is the separation. Like I have a rule. Like I only use it for the music, but like it's where my thoughts can really run wild. There's a pieces to the endorphins and all that. Like that's that's the high that I love the most. It's not just the high of physicality. It's what's being sparked in my brain.
Yeah,
I get the best thoughts. I can really level out certain things or discussions I had, or take myself off a ledge about certain things. Somebody's just fucking with you, and you're let me. That's what I love. So yeah, we're in a tough spot. And I don't see it getting better anytime soon, because unfortunately there's money attached to these businesses. Yeah. It's always been that way. I mean, I've always said it since day one. It's like, what did Mark create with the Facebook? I'm like, he missed the boat here. He knew what, it wasn't like he was smarter than everybody. This was never this was a psychology play. Yeah. He mastered the psychology. He understood what we're talking about, the primal nature. What do we need to be engaged? I'll lastly leave you with it, which is just a funny one to just think about. I think about airplanes sometimes. You ever been on an airplane when they're like, I'm sorry, folks, there's going to be no Wi-Fi on. Mm-hmm. It's like, what the fuck? Yeah. I've seen fucking people panic before, or just being on a plane in itself. If they cannot be if the person, me too, I understand. Forget the Wi-Fi, but if you can't be engaged in some way, whether you have some sort of tech product to watch a movie, and or somebody's on their 20, it's like now you look over it's almost like a running joke. The person, if you're on a 5-hour flight from SF to New York, and there's a person sitting next to you who's not doing anything, and they're just sitting there like this, you're like, who's that fucking psychopath? Yeah. Okay? I don't know why this is so funny.
Some superpower.
Who's that psychopath? Yeah. I'll tell you who it is. It's somebody who's fucking happy.
Yeah.
It's somebody who actually found a way to live life with normalcy. But again, for some reason, I don't know why that came to my mind. It's just funny to me. It's a good one anyway.
Yeah, I think the point, you made of maybe it not getting better anytime soon. I think what's really important with that is the opportunity. Like, we can't wait for these companies to do it. They're not going to. They have their own priorities. What we have to understand is, like, man, we are the only ones that are going to take, like, that have the ability to take responsibility and ownership for our own internal state, our own well-being, our own happiness, how we show up. And it's like, at some point we have to draw the line and be like, you know what? This thing in my life, whether it's Instagram, LinkedIn, alcohol, drugs, watching TV, sleeping in late, like, whatever it is, right? Everybody has their own special ingredients, but it's on us to be like, you know what? I'm sick of living this way. And really make the decision to commit to living in a totally different way and being open to figuring that out and embracing the discomfort of the unknown and the unfamiliar for a little bit, maybe having a little bit of faith that you'll be able to get to the other side. But they're not going to change, right? They have a bottom line. They have to grow. They have to grow revenue. Like, we can't put it on them to change what they put into the app, because that would mean people would, be on it less. We have to really gain our own attention and consciousness back if we really want to be a more mentally fit population. Because you're right. Right now, it's like, yeah, it's really declining. It's not going in a great direction.
That's it. Yeah, we could go for days on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mark, let me. I know we're towards our end of time, and I just want to wrap up with just a couple fun questions.
Sure.
Or maybe a couple questions. First one is, what do you feel like, especially with your online presence with LinkedIn and your following, and you take some stances on stuff. What do you feel like people misunderstand about you?
Misunderstand. If you can't accept some of the tone as far as it being like, was he serious? Was he not? I think that one, there could be some fine lines. Like, I've had people message me, like, personally, hey man, I've been following you a long time. I wasn't quite sure. Could you, and I'll be like, oh, and then I can't come out straight. But sometimes it's like, no, this is what I meant. And they're like, okay, well, I kind of disagree. And I'll be like, that's how I talk. Like, I love your take. I love your comment. I respect it. This is how I feel about it. So I'd say probably some of this newer stuff, which again, I want to be more vocal about, which is like, do what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
They might look at my track record and be like, yeah, he's just always, he's involved with the startup or like that's what I want to do and all that. Like, maybe there's misunderstandings there. Even though I talk openly about it, like, just that it's so tough. Like, why would you do that? So I think there's probably misunderstandings there that, again, I always try to balance out with the way that I communicate about the other side, or even about my side, about just So I'd say there's probably misunderstandings about my life in general. He looks like it's, he's got to just. Things look pretty good, even though, again, I feel like I'm pretty articulate about this life sucks sometimes. But within all that, although I'm auto-correcting in the way I'm describing it, I still think there's always going to be misunderstandings. Yeah. Or there's a take that somebody has of me and the way that I've described something, or my life in general, that they have a different view of, and that's I think that's totally cool and normal, and I hope to be able to always bring the light out of what the reality is.
Yeah. I think, knowing you and obviously your content for a while, and seeing how there's some polarity in some of the things that you post, just in terms of like how people react to it. Right. I mean, I think one of the things that I've learned getting to know you in the last year is like, it's always coming from a good place, and if you making a stand on something, I think what I see sometimes misunderstood is, maybe definitely your humor. Sometimes in some of the posts where I'm like, I think they probably thought he was too serious, or that he really cares too much about this or like really feels as extreme as it may have come across. So I'm like, I don't like just knowing you. I'm like, that's not really what's going on here. So, but yeah, just to say like, I always feel like it's always coming from a good place, you know, with you. One thing I wanted to ask you is what is the best advice that you've ever received?
Best advice. That's a good one.
Business, health, mental health, maybe even for the physique competitions you've been doing.
I think it's more holistic, but just in general, I think everybody will get is that to move on faster.
Yeah.
I think that there's been many people that I really respect, and they've given sort of the hint on different things that I've ever done. It could be work, it could be other related things, personal and the like. But like you've got to the best way to articulate in short form is decisiveness. Like we are all really, really indecisive.
Yeah.
And it carries with us in many ways in our lives. The ones to me that are really successful, and by the way, when I keep saying, or if I use that term, it never has to do with like money. It's just like successful in life could be successful in happiness. Like happy is they're wildly decisive.
Yeah.
You know, it can be good or bad in some instances. Like, did I move on from that? But they don't sit on things longer than they need to. And I think that's a really great asset to have in your back pocket when you move through life.
Yeah. Yeah. Same. That's something I've actually in the last few years have tried to just be way, way better with, because especially with the business and testing things like launching a website or a product or whatever it is, because what I found is, you know, again, speaking from a business side, is I'm just going to learn so much more quickly if I can just make a decision. Go out, sure, maybe it fucks up. Maybe, you know what? We learned. Now we can actually adjust as opposed to sitting on it and thinking about it for extended, period of time. Yep. Okay, last one. You could have dinner with 3 people, dead or alive. Who would it be?
I would say probably my dad would be one. I don't think about stuff like that, Well,
I don't either. That's why I'm asking it.
Isn't it a good one? Yeah, it's so good. Like I don't think that you get value from people. So I'll still try to answer. So my dad.
Yeah.
I think it'd be maybe my grandfather on that side, because there's always stories that came later, and I'm like, something that I heard later, and I'm like, I got to ask him about that. That one there's like a really good story.
Yeah.
And then. Yeah, I guess my kids, because, it's hard enough to get everything down. I'll leave you with, that's what comes to mind first.
Yeah.
There's no one specific person that I admire. I'm not a starstruck person. Steph Curry would be, like when I say it, now that I'm thinking about it, would be so ridiculous. I love Steph Curry for every reason that you can imagine.
Yeah.
So maybe I should have named him as number 3. But I'm not starstruck, and there's no one person that I think that I could be sitting with to be like extracting information and value from. I just don't think that way. And if I did, I could figure out a way to get them on a phone call. I truly do believe that. But yeah, in that order, but I do love Steph Curry. Go Dubs.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the recorded FaceTime you have with Steph Curry then.
Oh, God, that was so dope. So dope. Did you watch this Olympics at all? Like, do you care about that?
I did when I could. I didn't watch probably as much as I would have liked to. I actually didn't watch any basketball.
Okay,
which is something I definitely would have.
That's fine, because I get it too. Yeah. I had to spot all this cool stuff. Like, I make sure I watch the 100 meter track, or like the 200 meter track, like the relay. And then on basketball, I was like, I got to go watch the highlights of the gold medal game. I read an article on it, but I got to check out some. I got to check out some highlights. It's just like, what's going on? Anyway.
Yeah. Not surprised with him, but Mark, thanks so much, man. Appreciate you coming on and chatting. For people that are interested, where can they find you? On LinkedIn. Yeah, I'm not looking. As I was saying that, I was like, oh, don't give your address. We're not giving an address here. Awesome, brother. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks for having me.